Alright people, I'm super excited today because thanks to my friend again, I can review this year's OPPO Find X9 Pro. But I want to tackle it from another angle and answer a question I had at first that most likely you'll ask as well, and that is why should you buy OPPO over other brands like Vivo or Xiaomi or even iPhones that I'm using to record right now? Well, let's explore the answer today. Selamat pagi. Good morning everyone, Kenneth here and welcome to my review of the OPPO Find X9 Pro, a phone that I grew very fond of, especially now that they have a proper 200 megapixel tele lens just like the Vivo X300 Pro. I also grow to like the camera control pseudo button on the side here, and better yet, it has a monster 7500 mAh battery that we just see on the China-only Xiaomi 17 Pro Max here. So it has pretty much all the features you could think of this year, and there's not much downsides either. Maybe you could say it's the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 inside, but as we'll see later, it's perfectly speedy just like its Qualcomm counterpart that we have on a Xiaomi here. However, what I found on the 80 watts fast charging system, this only averages at 26 watts, and that's low compared to Xiaomi or iQOO that averages around 40 watts. And you can check the data and compare the charging test result in my ratings list, where the other phones fully charge around 40 minutes. The OPPO takes twice as long at 80 minutes. And as usual, the 80 watts marketing here is not entirely scam, as the first minute of charging, the phone did receive up to 67 watts of power to give that quick jolt when you need it. But it comes back to the decision of using a single cell versus dual cell battery system. Although I gotta say they kept the temperature in check, the phone never goes above 40 degrees Celsius during charging, and the charging brick itself doesn't exceed 45 degrees, which is good. And I can make the argument that the phone actually lasts that long, up to 2 days very easily. So when I think about other specs that they could but didn't skimp on, I think this is quite a fair trade-off. Now a quick disclaimer as usual, everything said is my own honest opinion. I would really appreciate if you could buy through the affiliate links to help me support the channel. And if you're into tech and audio, please hit the subscribe button. Hope to see you in the next videos. Thank you very much, and let's continue with the review. There's actually one more thing that could be considered as a downside here, which is the disk speed test. In my testing, generally across the board, it performs worse than the competition like the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max here, with the exception being the sequential read speed and the RAM, which is about similar. I got this result over 6 different runs. I restarted the phone every 3 runs, and I'm pretty confident with the result that it's just slower. Though honestly, in real life applications, I don't think this is much of an issue, because when you can shoot 4K 60 in log and high bitrate just fine, then you can pretty much do most things no problem. Now with that aside, let's move on to the good things that makes me appreciate this phone and answer the question in the title, why should you buy one for yourself? Starting with the camera. So the Find X9 Pro, in my opinion, has better telephoto capabilities than an iPhone 17 Pro without needing to add as much bulk as the Vivo X300 Pro that sacrifices battery capacity and weight balance, because this does not feel top heavy and it handles just like a normal phone. And a lot of times normal might seem boring, but when you start using it, you'll really appreciate how nice this phone is. It definitely takes better pictures than the 17 Pro Max here that tends to oversaturate and create bright, almost beautified looking pictures even though they are off. I like when you tap 1x button, you can switch to 28mm and 35mm. You can even set them as default, because at this focal length, it is better to take most subjects. It looks less warped and wide angle. Then honestly, the 3x tele lens is the star of the show here. It's so good that I rarely use the 2x crop from the main sensor. I have a few comparison shots where I can just move back a little bit and get much creamier bokeh, more natural subject separation, also better detail too, since this is native resolution. And you can also tap the 3x button to do 85mm, which is the native focal length on the Vivo phones, but honestly, 70 to 85mm is not too big of a difference, and it's enough to get really amazing shots. So what I feel is very similar to my experience with the Vivo X200 Pro last year. When you have a tele lens this good, the phone encourages you to go out and take more shots. You can naturally reach for things without getting awkwardly close. The color is consistent throughout all the lens, from tele, main, and ultra wide, and the camera button here really helps too. Well, it doesn't actually move, that's why I call it a pseudo button, but it senses pressure very well combined with haptic feedback. And when you double tap, it always opens up the camera, which I really grow to like. The location is perfect. Just my tip is to turn off the slide to adjust zoom right here. And I found no matter in iPhones or here, it's a very imprecise way to adjust the zoom. So it's better for the button to be, well, just a button. If you want to adjust the zoom, you just tap on these icons in the center. Moving on, there are a few other nice things that I need to mention. First is how the phone handles live photos. Unlike Vivo that creates a duplicate mini video that absolutely confuses me when I want to share a photo, this manages them into one single file, which is recognized as motion photos. You can even transfer them to iPhones and they are still recognized as live photos as well. And it goes both ways, but we'll talk about this in a bit. Second, the Hasselblad legacy lives on in modes like high-res 200 megapixel shooting on the 3x lens here, which is nice to have when shooting a scenery where you want to preserve as much detail as possible. And I can say the lens is great too. There's minimal edge softening, there's no purple fringing as far as my eyes can see, and the coating reduces as much lens flaring as Zeiss T-Star coating here, showing similar result to the Vivo X Fold 5, which is some of the best in the industry. And compared to the iPhone 17 Pro and my Dinosaur 13 Pro Max, I don't think there's much more needed to be said. It's a night and day difference. Third, there are fun features like Hasselblad Expand mode, which recreates the wide frame aesthetic of the actual expand camera. Even the animation is pretty fun, going from negative to color like this. There's also a Neon 800T film simulation, but unlike Vivo that bakes the processing directly into the imaging pipeline, with OPPO you can still apply these filters after the shot. So in this regard, Vivo takes things more seriously into recreating faithful film-looking images, but I have to say OPPO is moving in the right direction. I say this because sometimes what you see when you are shooting is not what you actually get after the fact. Alright, hit the thumbs up if you appreciate the video so far. Honestly, even I feel like that's a lot of camera talk, and I didn't actually talk about the front-facing 50 megapixel camera there, but I assure you that it is a good front-facing camera. But yeah, let's go on and talk about the video. And if you've seen my previous Tanjim Origin Lost Manor video, that A-roll was taken on this OPPO Find X9 Pro with log shooting and LUT provided from their website. Compare that to my yearly earbuds recommendation video that was shot on the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max, and another one I've yet to post that's shot on the Vivo X Fold 5 here. I think the OPPO fares the best so far. It transitions very smoothly from the brighter to the darker part of my face. Colors are consistent too with log capture on my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 here. Also, for general social media shooting with normal video mode here, you can swipe across the lenses from ultra wide to telephoto. The minimal shifting between lenses pleasantly surprised me, as it is very close to what the iPhone 17 Pro can do. And let's check out some sample 4K videos here so you can judge by yourself. Okay, so here we are now testing with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and I am trying to walk in a normal way, not trying to be stable in any way. And what do you think of the video quality and also the sound? And let's switch over to the OPPO right here. We're now recording with the OPPO Find X9 Pro, and what do you think of the video quality as well as the audio quality? How does it compare to the iPhone 17 Pro right here? And let me know in the comments. All right, today let's check out the front-facing camera, and this is what it looks like, what it sounds like. But yeah, otherwise colors are perfect. This is the stabilization. And what do you think of the video quality? Okay, time to talk about performance. First up, MediaTek is in no way inferior in this flagship realm. This phone can do whatever high performance task you throw at it, with cool temperatures as well. But I want to go over the benchmark quickly first. So starting from the Antutu V11, the OPPO scored 3.4 million, while the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max, it has 8 Elite Gen 5, scored 3.5 million. So it's not too far off in terms of CPU and GPU, but where Snapdragon pulls ahead slightly is in the memory score right here. Same thing can be said in Geekbench 6, and I did a lot of runs here, but comparing the best score we got, I think both chips are very close to each other, with MediaTek pulling slightly faster in the Vulkan GPU test, and we can see the same trend moving over to 3D Mark. In Wildlife Extreme, we're getting 44 FPS average on the OPPO compared to 38, 39 on the Xiaomi, and in Solar Bay, we are getting 53 on the OPPO, where the Xiaomi maxes out at 44, 45-ish FPS. That's quite a big difference actually, but benchmarks only tell a small part of the story. And you know me, I won't do 3D Mark's 20-minute stress test and just leave the phone alone, because I actually play real-life heavy mobile games instead and show you the trends. And the detailed breakdown will actually be a separate video comparing MediaTek to Snapdragon, because that is also a monster on its own. But generally said, in weathering waves, you can see the OPPO hitting similar average FPS compared to the Xiaomi, or even last year's iQOO 13 here with Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 4 technically. It does, however, use a bit more power, so the efficiency score that I calculated isn't as high. In Honkai Star Rail, things get better as these year's phones pull ahead better than previous gen phones. In terms of power as well, both OPPO and Xiaomi uses close to 5.1 watts, where the iQOO uses 5.4. Genshin Impact, on the other hand, shows how Qualcomm has years ahead of MediaTek when it comes to optimization. Even the older iQOO 13 pulling ahead of OPPO in basically every single metric, from higher average FPS, lower average power, and you'll see later in the breakdown that it has higher frame rate stability as well. Finally, Delta Force with a 120 FPS HD setting performs very well as expected, with very solid smoothness score. You can see the very tidy line there. All of the phones got above 98% smoothness score with 5% low frame rate on the 90 FPS. That's actually the best among all the phones here. The OPPO does use significantly more power at 6 watts average, and at one time touches just shy of 10 watts, where the Xiaomi only chills at 3.8 watts. And I know this might feel like an outlier where you need to multiply the power by 2 because maybe it uses dual cell battery, but as I'll explain later in my gaming test, you'll see why I think this is just the correct result. And another aspect we need to see is the temperature that's better across the board on the OPPO. During my 1-hour Weathering Waves run, running the latest Rogue Light mode on Weathering Waves, unfortunately that mode only runs at 45 FPS, but we still see the temperature rising there. But it was a very stable gameplay with just 9 FPS variants. All these tips are just the menus. And we ended the game at 41 degrees Celsius, and that's very cool compared to gaming phones I've tested in the past. And remember, we're playing one of the heaviest mobile games right now at maxed out setting, and we got this score. That's damn impressive. With that being said, performance on daily use is of course really good. It keeps up with the 120Hz refresh rate no matter where I am. And the huge 16GB of RAM keeps apps and games open quite far away back, so I rarely see any apps relaunching just like Vivo and the iQOO. The thing is, by default, it's got 12GB of swap memory on, and I honestly prefer turning this off to save on read-write cycle on the storage chip. It's just a toggle away. And speaking of multitasking, OPPO is one of the most exciting because they can do 90:10 split screen on landscape mode, which is very cool when you play 2 games at once. I can autoplay Honkai Star Rail here while playing Weathering Wave, which is updating right now. And the phone can definitely do it well. Just make sure to turn the settings on both games to medium preset. But let me know what are use cases you can think of in the comments, because I'm just curious what you do with this. And that all can't happen without a super big and spacious 6.78-inch screen. It's a superb display in every factor, starting from the thin 1.15mm bezel that almost touches the edge of the case. It's a Gorilla Glass Victus 2 with an applied screen protector from the factory. It's got 2K resolution, 120Hz refresh rate with high rate PWM dimming, which you can see in this test video at 25% brightness. The OPPO in the middle is miles better than the iPhone 17 Pro, as most of the screen is lit up at every point in time, with Xiaomi getting a close second. If we reduce the brightness to 0% or 1-nit brightness that these phones can achieve these days, you can see how the OPPO switches over to DC dimming automatically, and it keeps most of the screen on much better than Xiaomi that is still in PWM mode, and you need to turn that setting first off to switch over to DC dimming, which afterwards it will be as good as the OPPO, but it's just a no comparison to the iPhone 17 Pro. Now, it's my first time doing these tests, and I'm personally not that sensitive to brightness settings like this, but if you do and you get fatigued easily when looking at your phone, then this could be one reason to blame. Basically, the more black parts in the screen means lower frequency PWM dimming, and it's like having bright light strobing at you at all times, and unfortunately, me, Apple, Samsung, and Google are some of the worst offenders in this regard, even though they sell their phones a ton. Okay, last but not least, I've got some grab bag of features that you should not miss. First is iPhone-like action button on the left called Snap Key. It's by default set to do OPPO's note-taking app called Snap to Mindspace. And the idea is brilliant. Whenever you see something, you hit the button and it takes a screenshot and recognizes what's inside. It analyzes it, transcribes everything. Or you can hold the button to record your voice, so you can simply dictate anything you have in mind and it'll automatically transcribe and create summary to all the notes you've taken, so they can be easily searchable by a double tap. That's really cool, and that ties to the ColorOS 16 experience in general, which I start to fall in love with. First up, their take on lock screen is drop dead gorgeous with moving live photos and custom texts. Despite copying iPhone's homework on the widget and honestly most of the elements, it actually improves upon it and make it even more personal. There's the little things like animated swipe back, so your back gesture now feels connected with the UI on screen. I also like the home screen folders that not only can be made large, but you can make the apps inside 3x3 or 2x2, or even highlight one big app that you can tap immediately without actually opening the folder. Also, you can make the actual folder 3x1 thin, whether it's vertical or horizontal like that, or heck, actually any single app icon in that regard. And of course, the animation of opening and closing apps is just as fast as OriginOS, so it really keeps up with your speed. Just as importantly, this year Xiaomi, Vivo, and OPPO all have interconnectivity with iPhone, Mac, and PC. Specifically for the OPPO, the app is called O+ Connect, and it can sync between iPhone and OPPO the incoming calls, messages, notifications, and most importantly, AirDrop. You can even tap the OPPO NFC to an iPhone and it'll invoke an app clip, letting the iPhone user first download the O+ Connect app, then proceed with the transfer through Wi-Fi Direct. Personally, I still prefer Blip for this purpose because it's actually more flexible, supports every single platform you can name, but to PC and Mac, you can do file transfer, file browsing, screen sharing, also sync notifications and clipboards, which is useful. Which brings the question, why buy an iPhone again, right? Yet here I am buying the new iPhone 17 Pro and using iPhone 13 Pro Max daily. But yeah, last but not least, it's got good haptics. The NFC can copy access cards, and the speaker is, I guess, okay. It sounds a bit too bright on the treble and very forward on the vocals. There's mid-bass thump as well, which is okay for the size. But honestly, the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max with Dolby Atmos turned on have better balance here, though both still have a ways to go before matching what Apple can do with their iPhones. They just sound really balanced and nice. Or there's the new POCO F8 Ultra that will have Bose tuned 3-speaker system that sounds really unlike any phone in the market right now. So super excited for that as well. Otherwise, I have one last attention to detail that's exclusive to OPPO, at least in the Android realm, and that is the button placement. They deliberately kept the middle part empty, which happens to be where you'll clamp phone holders for tripod and car mount, or even clip phone coolers. Then that's a very good thing because you don't have to unmount every single time you want to press the power button like I do with the Vivo or Xiaomi that places the button further down. So yeah, I hope I managed to convince you to buy an OPPO Find X9 Pro this year. It definitely managed to convince me, and feel free to comment your questions down below. I'll try to link the in-depth performance review very soon, and thank you so much for watching. I'm Kenneth, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.